The world of theater is full of stars. But just like in the night sky, sometimes we don't see them all. Some are in the wings, some are maybe up over us in the catwalk. Hopefully they're not under the stage, but you never know. In this series, we are going to meet those hidden stars of the theater, hear their stories, and be inspired by them. So join me on this journey here in my state-of-the-art production studio in my backyard as we meet the hidden stars of theater. Hey everyone, welcome back to my trailer and welcome back to the Hidden Stars of Theater. I'm your host, Jamie Davis. It is so good to have you with us, as it always is. We've got a great show for today. Amy Laemmerhirt, who is spent time as a scenic painter and still does some of that, and most recently and a lot of really cool tours we're going to hear about. She's been the props master and done all things prop related. I learned a lot on just getting to know Amy, and you're going to learn a lot today as she shares with us the world that she lives in, and it's just really good stuff. So I'm excited to dig into that. But first, we got a feature school today that sent me some great pictures, some shots from their 2019-2020 season. And that is Poway High School in San Diego, California, under the directions of Katie Newbanks. And so we're going to start by showing those shots right now. So before we get to know Amy, let's do that. Let's roll those show shots. Hey, very good. That looked like you guys had some great shows this season, Poway. And Katie, thank you for sending those in. Hey, if you're watching this and we haven't shown off your sets, your actors, your tech people, why not? Send us pictures. Send me the pictures. My email address is down in the description of this video. You got no excuses. Get some to me and we can show you off, all right? I don't want to just go like stalk you on Facebook and find pictures. It might not be legal, and it's definitely not cool, but so send them to me so I can do it. All right. But that's not why we are here today. We are here today to meet and celebrate one of the hidden stars of theater, and that is Amy Laemmerhirt. Amy, welcome, and thank you for being our guest here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amy is a scenic painter and a props master. And I'm excited because, you know, we've had several different guests in different disciplines, as they say in the theatre world. But you're the first one to represent either one of those, scenic painters or props people, props masters, and educate us. And I asked you this earlier, but for other people, because we kind of wonder, what is the official term? Is there one, or we call you props dude, or just as long as we're polite?
Either props master, props supervisor, something like that. Anything's fine, really.
Probably at times props ninja, you know.
I've gotten that before. I don't like prop tart.
Yeah, no prop tarts. That's not good. Don't go there. Don't go there. Very good. You've all been warned. All right. So what we want to do is just to get to know you. You have a fascinating story, and I'm excited to share that with everyone. So there's no reason to delay. We want to get right into that. So we just want to learn from your experience, really, because as you know, as I say, who we are comes from where we've been, and all of the people that have shaped us and influenced us, and all of the life experiences. Amy, they are what have brought you to where you are today. And there's wisdom in everybody's journey. And so we're just sponges ready to soak that in and be taught from you and to just hear all of those things. So I will give you the stage, ma'am. It is yours to share and to lead.
Great. Awesome. So I'm from Buffalo, New York. I grew up going to theater a lot as a kid. My aunt would bring me to Shea's Theater in Buffalo. So I saw a lot of the touring shows there when I was young. I saw things, I think Aladdin was my very, very first show I ever saw. And then Cats. So I really, really enjoyed all of that. When I first started out going to theater, I was much more excited about the acting and singing aspect. When I was in elementary school and middle school, I was in chorus, and I was actually in a couple of musicals in middle school. I was in Cinderella, and I played a mouse and things like that.
Nice. Now, are there pictures out there somewhere I can put up on the screen?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
You don't think so, or you're not willing to admit it?
Oh, it didn't go very well. I was a very timid mouse in Cinderella, so I wasn't.
Which is right.
Yeah, I was very in character.
That's awesome.
So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. In middle school, I got really, really into Phantom of the Opera. I was very obsessed with it. I thought I was going to be Christine Daae someday and travel the world. And as I got into high school, I didn't pursue singing or anything like that. I was more interested in visual arts. So I sort of moved on to drawing and a lot. So I was more into drawing and painting. A lot of my friends in high school were into the technical theater side of things. And I'm looking back, I wonder why I didn't do that or didn't realize that, oh, all of my friends do this. Maybe I should do it too. But I was very involved in like art club and things like that. So I had sort of a full schedule at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when I went in, after I graduated high school, I went into college as undeclared. I didn't know what I was really going to do. I thought I was going to start out in criminal justice, maybe being a sketch artist, something like that. That all seemed exciting to me. It wasn't a great fit. It wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be.
You were thinking TV, weren't you?
I was really, yeah.
Criminal Minds,
absolutely.
the BAU. I understand.
Yeah. And so after that, I switched majors. My first major switch was fine art painting with so I did that for about a year. I had really great professors in that as well, but they sort of let me know that my career options were very limited. That's what I chose. So knowing that, I switched to illustration and graphic design, which I enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed a lot more than painting or the fine art painting. But it just didn't really feel right. I enjoyed everything I was doing, but I also sort of realized I enjoyed drawing for myself and creating things for myself more than I did working on assignments and things like that. So I thought that might not be a great fit for me. While this was I took an English 102 class, okay. And my professor, he chose to only do one text for the entire semester, and that text was Shakespeare's Coriolanus, which is sort of
an interesting choice.
Shakespeare play. Yeah. So I became obsessed with it really fast because I had sort of been into Shakespeare before then, but that really, really got me into Shakespeare. And we watched the Royal Shakespeare Company recorded version of it with Alan Howard as Coriolanus.
Wonderful.
And I thought he was a fantastic actor. And so I looked into what other things he had done, and I discovered Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream from, I think, 1970. And it was just a completely different version of Shakespeare than I'd ever seen. It was like this white set with trapezes, and it was this amazing circus theme. And so I got a book out of the library. Yep. Yep. So I got a book out of the library that was devoted exclusively to that. And it was like, they took it on a world tour. It's like, that would be amazing to work with Shakespeare and travel the world and all of that. That's everything I wanted.
So is that the first time that you had even heard tour? I mean, as far as it's related to theater, so that was kind of an introduction to that?
Yeah, it was. And it was amazing to hear like the cast flying around the world and all of their different experiences in all these countries and how theater is different in every country. And so that really pushed me to think about theater as my major and sort of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. After that semester, or at the end of the semester, I went to the theater department and talked to the head of the department, Donna. She was amazing, and I felt welcomed immediately. And she was like, if you want to transfer credits over and become a theater major, she's like, totally do it. And she was just so lovely and kind. And I was like, all right, I'll give that a shot. And my first class is one of the first days I was actually in I don't even remember what class it was, but my very first projects I ever did, I had to take this giant pink refrigerator across campus and just push it across campus to another theater. And I was like, this is already amazing. This is already sort of what I want to do, just do goofy stuff.
Yeah.
So at the time, I was like, this is it. This is it. I'm just going to push refrigerators around and be happy. And so, yeah, I did a lot of design, scenic design and lighting design in college. I had a professor who really pushed me towards lighting design, and I really enjoyed it. So I stayed an extra year in undergrad. I went to Buff State. I don't think I mentioned that. But I spent an extra year there. I graduated with a BFA in technical theater and design. And the summer after that, I got my first real life theater job at Ohio Light Opera as an electrician. And I loved it. I loved it. And it was, I felt like I finally found what I had been looking for a long time. And I felt like I fit in and I had friends, and not that I didn't have friends in other like other majors and doing other things, but it just felt right.
So you started as an electrician at the Summer Stock, Ohio Light Theater.
Yes.
Had you done a lot of that in college?
I did a little bit. I actually had never done a hang and focus until I got to Ohio Light Opera. Yeah. So that was interesting, because I'm also, one of the reasons that I'm not an electrician now is that I'm not great with heights. So doing the hang and focus was like, oh, maybe I won't be an electrician.
Can we just lower the battens?
Yeah, can we just bring everything in and guess it'll be fine? Yeah. But I enjoyed everything there. We did 7 shows in one summer, so I got to see all this light opera and Gilbert and Sullivan, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I chose to go to grad school when the head of my department at Buff State, she was retiring, and at her retirement party, she hugged me and she was like, "You should go to grad school, honey." I was like, "Okay, that's all right,
done."
So yeah, so I went to URTA and presented all of my scenic designs and things. I went with the assumption I was going to be doing scenic design, and I ended up, none of the grad schools that I interviewed with, I ended up going to, but my scenic design professor in undergrad, her professor taught at Cal State Long Beach in California, so I chose to go there, mostly because the head of the scenic design department there is from Russia, and the first semester I was in grad school, I was able to go to Russia for 3 months.
That's way cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, so that was great. And I hadn't been on an airplane until I went to Long Beach for my interview there. So that was the first time I'd ever been on a plane.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I was going to Russia. So yeah. I enjoyed grad school a lot, but it was very, very, very difficult. I was very stressed out. And by the end of it, I was very burnt out.
Was your grad school experience primarily practical or academic, or was it a good mix?
It was a good mix. A good mix. We worked in the scene shop for 4 hours a day in addition to our classes. So I got a lot of hands-on work, building things, carpentry. So that was nice. That was good. And I also got to teach a scenic painting class, which I loved. That was probably my favorite part of grad school, actually, was teaching scenic painting. And we did a lot of model building, which was great. And that was the other part I really enjoyed, was building very, very tiny little things. But towards the end of grad school, I realized that design wasn't necessarily what I wanted. I would rather do things more hands-on and be more involved with the running of the show itself. Which I actually, when I graduated, I ended up going more towards scenic painting, which is also my interest, but that's way less of dealing with the actual running of the show. So my first professional gigs out of grad school were all scenic painting. I did Ohio Light Opera a couple of years. I did Gateway Theater in Long Island as a scenic charge, which was really fun. And then One of the people I actually met at Ohio Light Opera was my now husband, who was taking a break from one of his tours with the Kennedy Center. So that sort of reignited my desire to go on tour. And about a year after I graduated grad school, he was on the show Hello Dolly, and they needed a last minute assistant props person. And I was available. And I had always wanted to go on tour. Well, since I knew what touring was, I'd wanted to do it. And so I said yes, and I packed my things, and I was on the plane the next day. So I found out that I got the job, and then I packed up very badly because I didn't really know how to tour at that point. And then I was out into
Maybe
my
that's
first
a
tech.
whole segment. Yeah, and so that was your first props assignment as well?
Yeah, it was my first professional props gig as well.
So I'm seeing a pattern, Amy. You know, your first professional gig was electrician, which you'd never hung and focused.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So you're an adventurous soul, we're learning.
I don't feel like it, but
it seems, yeah. That's great.
Yeah. So my first tour was Hello Dolly, which the beginning was very stressful because I really had no idea what I was doing at all. Had visited my husband once or twice when he was on tour, but it was a very different sort of tour because it was really small. It was just a box truck, and it was children's theater going to smaller venues. And this was a 4-truck tour. So I showed up in the middle of Tech Week, and the head props guy was still building props. So I helped with that. And we helped create a track for the show, and because it didn't really exist until that point. And since then I've done, I think, 8 tours at this point.
Wow.
2 as assistant, and then the rest as head. So yeah, it's been great.
That is awesome. And when you helped originate the props for that show, where was that? Where were you guys at?
Oh gosh, it was at a community college in New Jersey.
Okay.
And I never played it again, so I don't even know if I could remember the name.
Got you. But it wasn't necessarily. It was you were using their facility, I guess.
Yes,
to do
we
it.
were. We were using they had a scene shop, and a lot of venues we play don't have them. So that's one of the reasons I suppose that was chosen for a site to tech the show. It was a rather small theater, but they had a really nice scene shop, and they had a lot of support space for building things, which was good because we had to build some tables and things like that.
That's interesting, and we hadn't talked about this, but
Yeah.
You said the space to tech the show. So I guess obviously, just like any show beginning, you start rehearsals and you do tech. But are a lot of times are those like colleges use their facilities for that kind of thing? It probably is more economical than renting a professional theater, I would obviously.
Yeah, I've actually teched in Columbus, Georgia, multiple times, and they have a college there. So they have a decent scene shop, and they've got room, and a lot of it's helpful to have that kind of thing when you're teching a show. And I've been lucky; all the places I've teched have sort of been that way, but I don't think it's necessarily always like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's cool. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great journey. And you are definitely adventurous, and you've got a lot of different skills, which is cool. And we're going to talk more about that a little later, dive into that kind of thing. But I want to go back and just kind of ask you some follow-up questions to some of what you shared. One of those is in high school, you kind of talked about how when you were younger, it was all about the stage and you wanted to be Christine and Phantom, which is great. But then you kind of lost that when you got into high school. It wasn't so much performance based, and you wanted to focus more on visual art. This is just a curiosity question. You feel like there was any collaboration at all between the two departments in high school, the theater and the visual arts?
There didn't seem to be in my specific high school. At least I segregated myself a little bit, not on purpose or anything like that, but like the art club didn't really like create backdrops or anything for the theater department or anything like that. But actually, when I was in college, one of the classes that I did, they created there was like a collaboration dance piece between the art department and the theater department. But my high school was very, the theater department was very, very small in my high school. And yeah, I don't remember a whole lot about it, honestly. I know that, yeah, I'm sure there was a scene shop, but I never stepped foot in it. So
Well, and a lot of high schools don't have scene shops.
yeah,
That's, I mean,
yeah,
the reality is there just isn't the space.
yeah.
But man, that's something that I think we should encourage, you and me together, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it just makes sense. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe had that done, you would have known much sooner. Hey, this is something I could jump into.
It's true.
So if you're out there and you're a teacher, reach out to the art department, and they've got some things that will help you. I mean, come on, we all know you're stressed out, right? Been there. So the next question is a little more, it's almost a little obscure, I would say, but it was interesting to me that so many of the shows, Amy, that you talked about being really influential in key moments of your life were Shakespeare, right? Which is pretty far from the world of modern musical theater per se. And is that, I mean, was that just a coincidence? It was just because those were the shows that were available, or is there kind of a deep love for the bard buried in there somewhere?
I do have a very deep love for Shakespeare. I think in my ideal world, I would tour with a Shakespearean show, but that's not really sort of an option, it seems like. I also love musical theater very much. But it also seems like it's more difficult to tour with a Shakespeare show.
There's not a lot of it going on, let's be honest.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of it going on. Yeah, and with musical theater, it's just so it's so high energy. So backstage is just there's so much energy backstage, and I don't know if it would be the same with a Shakespeare show. I've never actually done one professionally, so yeah, I would be absolutely interested in doing a Shakespeare show professionally, but the closest I got was Something Rotten, which had Shakespeare in it.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was really.
Did you brush up your Shakespeare? Yeah. I hate Shakespeare. I hate Shakespeare. That's right. Yes. Funny. Yeah. A funny song.
Yeah.
And in teaching, you mentioned that you really enjoy teaching. That you think that's a future thing for you, maybe?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I would really like to do that. I think I would have a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed doing it when I was in grad school, and just encouraging people, because it was a lot. It was all students had to take it, and a lot of students are very, very self-conscious about their art skills, which I don't think they have to be, because it's just another. It's just something else to practice and be good at. I don't really necessarily believe in like innate talent. Everybody draws when they're little, and then
true. That's very true.
And it just depends when you stop, because when you don't stop, you just keep getting better. But if you stop, then you don't have the same skills. I enjoyed that part of it, like encouraging people's creativity and working with a medium they hadn't worked with in years and years and years. Like some of them hadn't painted since they were like finger painting in kindergarten. And I really enjoyed that part of it.
That's awesome. And one of the things a lot of people may not know, scenic painting is very much a gridded out thing, right? You don't necessarily, like maybe somebody else even does the original drawing, and then you can take a piece of, grid paper or whatever, or draw a grid over it, and then put grids on am I right in that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many tricks and tools to help you in scenic art, that if you aren't like you don't feel super strong with your drawing skills, there's so many tricks to help you. You don't have to be like the best artist in the entire world to be a scenic painter. A lot of it is, and also there's more, it doesn't have to be necessarily as intricate as something you're looking at up close, because most people see it from very far away.
That's exactly right. I know when I make props and I do things and I work with students, I always tell them, don't take too much time on the fine detail, because it doesn't have to look good up close. And
yeah.
That helps a lot of people build confidence in that, for sure.
Yep.
It's great. That's very good. And sometimes I would imagine if the scenic designer has actually done the drawings, they don't want you to put your own
Oh
flair in
yeah.
it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's your job to paint what they painted exactly. So,
Yeah, following directions is important, children.
yes.
Well, that's awesome. So, a couple other things here from your journey, which was
Mhm.
great. One of the things that you mentioned about the theater department when you found your thing, right? Um, but a lot of it sounds like what you have loved through your story is about the people and the relationships, right? So, at the
Yes.
time, did you notice a difference, or was one of those things kind of more influential? Was it more about the what, or more about the who, or maybe that didn't even develop until later?
Yeah, I think I didn't realize what it was at the time. And looking back on it, I think a lot of it was the who. Um, because the other departments I was in, like illustration, for example, it's not as collaborative as theater is. So I think I was missing that a lot. And I wouldn't say that it was competitive because that department wasn't necessarily competitive, but it was very much you're working on your own thing.
Right.
And then you're going to put your thing up on the wall and everybody's going to critique your thing. Um, which sometimes happens, like which was happening a lot when I was in scenic design. And but when I got into theater in college, it was very much like we're working together to create this thing. And I think that was what I was looking for, because I really enjoy collaborating with people and things like that, and I was missing out on that in the
Yeah.
other departments I was in.
With theater is definitely about collaboration.
Hmm.
It's all very much about the cast and crew and all being one family. That's great.
Hmm.
Okay, so Russia. How super jealous am I of that experience? 3 months in Russia with and even a lot of people travel abroad, but I think you had the advantage of doing it with someone you already knew who was from there.
Hmm.
So what a unique experience. Talk to me a little bit about what you noticed were techniques and styles different. Did you learn some things that you would say maybe still influence your art today?
Absolutely. So when I was in Russia, my professor is the artistic director of his own theater company there called Theater Pokoleni, which means Theater of Generations. It was a theater that his father started. So it was a theater that was inside the wall of St. Peter and Paul Fortress. So it was
Oh, cool.
all of these halls in the wall, basically. So they had 8 halls. The first hall was like their lobby. The second hall was the audience. The third hall was the actual theater. Fourth hall was backstage, stuff like that.
That's
So
cool.
it was this amazing, beautiful, beautiful found space. And they produced all of their own work. Like they would adapt plays, but a lot of it was stuff that they conceived themselves. Um, and when I was there, we were lucky enough to collaborate with Chris Barreca from Cal Arts. So
Wow.
he flew out and we sort of created a devised piece called Petersburg. So and it was so interesting there because I only really worked with that theater very closely, but all of the actors there were also the technicians for the most part.
Okay.
So they were the ones that would hang the lights. They were the ones that would operate the light board. If they weren't in the show, they'd be operating the light board, things like that. The very tiny little 2-scene preset board. But it
Wow.
was really the most beautiful theater I've ever seen. They did a really great version of King Lear called Baz Lyra, which is without Lear. So it's all of King Lear, but without the character of King Lear. There's a chorus for him at the beginning, and
Oh,
it was
interesting.
beautiful. It was really great. Um,
So like kind of like in the Greek tradition, the Greek chorus represented the king.
yeah, yeah, it was
That
very
is cool.
cool. Um, and so I saw that a bunch of times. I saw actually a couple more really cool devised Shakespeare shows there as well. And it was all like found theater basically, like
Yeah.
all yeah, it was just incredible. Um, and I saw a lot of ballet there, which was beautiful. Yeah, it was really exciting to work with a group of people from a completely different background and create a theater piece. Um, and after I left, um, people went back the next year and they worked on it some more. And so that theater piece is still being worked on and tweaked and changed, and so it's still I know they had to switch theaters, but I believe it's still going on in a different space. So
Okay.
yeah, it was just an incredible experience.
Yeah, cool. One of those things that, man, students, if you ever get an opportunity like that, take advantage of it while you can. Because, yeah, as you get older in life, they just don't come as often. But that's okay. I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter. Well, so here's the cool thing for you, Amy. I don't know if you're aware, but you are actually the first prop master and scenic painter on our show. But since property, we've talked quite a bit about scenic painting up to this point. So you get to kind of be the one who tells us and talks us through the position. We've talked to carpenters and electricians and audio guys. Those guys are a dime a dozen. Just kidding. We love them all. They're all in our family. But we haven't had the privilege of having a prop master yet, and so you get to kind of represent your guild, so to speak. And we would love to learn more about what does that mean. Because I know from having spoken with you a little bit this week, it means a lot more than I thought it meant on tour. It's kind of redefined for me. Oh, wow, there's a lot more there than I would ever have dreamed. And so I would love it if you would just talk us kind of through, what does a prop master do? Are there different positions within that title? What does your typical week look like in a tour, so to speak? Yeah, and I think that'll be good. It'll be great.
Awesome. So I generally, and let's see, most of my tours I'm the only props person. My last tour, Something Rotten, there were two of us, but a lot of times it's just me. So the first thing I do in a day, if we're moving a show, if we're loading in a show, a lot of times we'll have 5 load-ins in a week, or we may only have 1 load-in in a week, depends how long we're staying. My first job in the morning is actually the very first thing I do when I walk in the building is meet the head props person of the building. So I'll talk to them about the show that we're putting on. So for example, if we are setting up an orchestra pit and we need chairs and stands, I'll ask them, we'll need 5 chairs and 5 stands for later this afternoon.
Because you set up the orchestra pit.
Yes, we set up the orchestra pit.
Wow, which a lot of people probably don't. And I know I didn't realize
Yeah.
that was part of a property. That doesn't seem like a property person thing, but interesting.
Yep. So I'll talk to them about that. Some tours that are bigger than the ones that I've been on have a lobby rehearsal. So they have another setup for the band in the lobby. So that'll be set up in the morning. But after I talk to the head props person, get everything sorted out with them just to make sure we're on the same page so they know how the day is going to go. So, there's no surprises. I give them the schedule, like when we're going to take lunch, because sometimes props will take lunch at a different time than the carpentry team, something like that, just to make sure we can all work together efficiently. So after I talk with them, the trucks will be unloaded. So on the most recent tour I did was Rent. So we had 2 trucks for rent. No, oh my gosh, 3 trucks for rent.
Yeah.
We had 3 trucks for rent. It's been a while. So I would, when they unload the truck and things come off the truck into the building, I would just direct where things go. So that helps other departments just not have to worry about that. And it's sometimes difficult if more than like one person's directing the truck, because it just makes sure that they can all do their jobs, because a lot of times carpentry has to come in the morning and lay out points for the rigging and things like that. So that way I don't necessarily have a lot to do in the morning. So I help direct that. So on Rent, I would direct the first truck, help direct the second truck, and then the third truck would be all of my stuff. So it would be props, and then in the nose of the truck is wardrobe. Wardrobe comes in, at least on Rent, they came in a little later than the rest of us. They would come in at around 11. So I would just make sure that all of their gondolas come off the truck and they go where they need to go. Rent had a very minimal wardrobe set up backstage, but sometimes some shows have like a wardrobe alley, like a gondola alley, that I would set up for them. So when wardrobe comes in, all of their things are there. So after that, I would generally start working on the orchestra pit. So I would get the orchestra pit dropped, make sure that we have chairs and stands and things that we need there, set up the keyboard, set up the drum kit, and set up sometimes stand lights, sometimes electricians do that, sometimes props do.
So you have to know instruments. I mean, you have to know all of that stuff. Did you have any experience with that before, or is it just learn it on the job?
No, I didn't have any experience before I became a props person at all. I've worked with a lot of really, really great drummers who are very nice and help me understand their kits and make sure that I get things set up for them correctly.
Yeah.
Rent was a little different because the band is set up on stage. So that happens a little bit later in the afternoon.
Right.
And the drum setup for Rent was very different than I'd ever set up a drum kit before. So in that case, I sat with the drummer for an hour and we put it together so that I knew how it went together, because a lot of times the band might not be in the same state as we are in the morning. They may still be traveling. So, and they only have about half an hour to make sure all their stuff is set up correctly. So,
oh, wow. So you got to get it right.
Yeah. So, like I said, with Rent, things were a little different because the band sets up on stage, which is actually, I like a little better, because then you don't have to worry about an orchestra pit. Because some theaters, the orchestra pit can be tricky. If it doesn't have a lift, that can be difficult.
Yes.
But after the orchestra pit is set up, on some shows, I'll set up the Marley if they have Marley. Rent had a deck, so carpentry sets up the deck. But Something Rotten, we had Marley, so me and my assistant would get that down when it was, convenient for everybody else. Once that's set up, I can start setting up the props for the show, set up the prop boxes where they go, set up wardrobe upstage if it hasn't been set up already, and make sure all my onstage props are there. So that's basically the bulk of the traditional props load in. After that's done, it's dinner break, hopefully. If it's a really busy day, it's a very short dinner break, but on Rent, I'd get a little bit of time. When I would come back, it would be sound check. So I would just make sure everything is set up for the show. On Rent, it was a little different because I had to do an amp check. So I would be with the actor and he would play guitar, and I would make sure the amp was set to the appropriate volume for the house that we're in, because it changes a little bit every day. But that was the only show I've done that for. And after that, I'd teach. On Rent, I had 2 locals with me for the show. So I would teach them their tracks, which on Rent was really minimal, but some shows it's a lot. So I just walk through the track with the locals just to make sure they have a heads up and know what's going on. Some shows I give them track sheets. Rent didn't need one because it was really simple. Something Rotten didn't end up needing one because it was just easier to explain in the moment. But Motown was like a 4-page track sheet for local.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just depends on the show. After all that, we'll run the show. And then after the show's over, we either start loading out or we can go to a hotel or a bus. On a one-nighter, it's load in, show, load out. So we'll get done around, depending on the show. Like Rent, I was done at like midnight. Other shows, I'd be done around 2 a.m. So just depends on the show. That's sort of a typical load-in day for me.
Okay. So you didn't talk a lot about props there. You talked about helping everybody else in the world except for yourself much. So first of all, you really are, your hands are in a little bit of everybody's business, because sounds like you really help them all out, which is great.
Yeah.
But you got to have a lot of skills for that.
Yes. All of my electrician background helped. Things like that helped. The other thing I didn't really talk a whole lot about is backload. So like if the place we're loading into is very, very small, sometimes we have to take empty cases and carts and things like that and put them back on the truck. And generally I'm free enough that I try to help out with that. I think I was very spoiled on Rent, and I didn't have to do that at all. I sort of joined a crew that already existed. So they had a really great thing going. So they knew exactly what to backload, when to backload. And we never really had to do it because it was such a small show. But but also I think my everything is clouded right now by the fact that Rent was such a small show that my prop setup was very minimal. But on other shows, there is quite a lot to the props aspect of it. My load in, like with Something Rotten, there were a lot of things that had to be unpacked. We had to take things off their travel wheels. So we had some big platforms that all of our props were stored in. So we had to get those out and set them on other sides of the stage. A lot of the big props were on sort of put on travel wheels so that their wheels wouldn't get damaged.
Right.
So there was a lot to that show, and there was a lot to like Motown and things like that. But Rent was really minimal prop setup because it all lived on stage forever. Basically, all the big tables just were there the whole show. So.
And what about like prop maintenance? You know, obviously these things get used and abused throughout. Is that your responsibility or something, you know, as the tour goes along?
It is. Some shows there's not very much maintenance, but most of them there's quite a bit. With Rent, there was a lot of maintenance. The show had been out for 4 years already, so there's only so much you can do. I mean, when I got the props, they were in very good condition, but you know, we're using a lot of things the way they're not really meant to be used. So like,
absolutely.
So you have to reinforce, like with Rent, we had a telephone that was literally whipped off a table, thrown from a fire escape. So it's like you have to make sure that that phone is able to be tossed and abused a little bit. So there was a lot of maintenance with that aspect of it. And because there's real instruments used by actors in the show, that also fell to me. So I would have to get guitars serviced quite often and amps serviced. If there was something that was beyond my skill level that broke, say like a chair's leg completely fell off, and I'm an okay carpenter, but I'm not, you know, the best in the world. There's always people around you can ask for help. So,
right.
Especially like something that requires a whole lot of sewing, which I can sew okay. But if it has to look really, really pretty, I'll very nicely ask head wardrobe, can you help me sew this, please? So yeah, the maintenance does fall on us, but there's always people to assist if needed.
Yeah, awesome, very good. So there's some terms that you mentioned that I want to pull out just because I'd love for everybody to learn terms. Is good to know, especially if it's something that someday we want to go into this. The more you know, the better off you are to begin with. I'm going to go way back in your journey just because you mentioned ERTA. And talk to us a little bit about what that was. You said that's where you went and interviewed for some graduate programs for university.
Yes. ERTA is a conference specifically for students looking to go into grad school. I don't even think you need to be a student, but people looking to go into grad school, be it scenic design, lighting design, costume design. So it's held in New York City. At least it was when I did it. And you just present your portfolio, and graduate schools basically shop around. If they want to have an interview with you, they'll write it down on your little paper that you have, the little time slot. And you basically just get interviewed for hours. So yeah, you get, and then you can ask them questions, they can ask you questions. And it's just a way to see if you'll be a good fit for their graduate program. And it's also a good, it's very helpful if you're looking for, to get tuition assistance and things like that.
Absolutely. So, and who isn't looking for that?
Yes. So, so that's So.
Okay. And again, kids, we've talked about this before. It's never too early to start building your portfolio. Better to have too much and pick out some things than to scramble the last minute to have anything in it.
Yes.
So, and that is, ERTA is specific to theater then, and potentially to scenic or designs.
Yes. I believe when I was, it's been a while since I've done it, but it was specifically for the design aspect of theater. And
I'll put a link to ERTA below.
Great.
Marley and Deck. Sounds like a cartoon. I think, was it Marley and Me? I think. So you talked about you guys were responsible. One of your responsibilities was putting down the Marley, or if it was the deck, the carpenters would do it. So I know what those are, but educate us.
Okay, so Marley is a vinyl dance floor that's rolled up. So it travels on hopefully on a tube. Um, and it's rolled out and it's taped down. And it's mostly for dance, from what I understand. Mostly, it's helpful for dancers, a dance heavy show. And not tap though.
Yeah. Yeah.
And decking is just it's a wooden floor, so it's pieces of floor that lock together, generally with like a coffin lock, and that is a lot. There are a couple different reasons for traveling your own floor. I think one of the big reasons is so that your spike marks are with you all the time.
Nice.
And that you with rent the set sort of bolted into the floor. So you just travel the floor. So that you don't have to measure things every single day. And
nice.
It's also more reliable, so the dancers know what they're on every day. It's generally the same every day. With Marley, it's different because sometimes theater floors are concrete, sometimes they're wood, so that is a little different. I've only used I've done 3 tours with Marley. Only 3 tours with Marley. The rest have been deck. The most recent one I've done with Marley is Something Rotten, and that was cool. And then I did a tour a couple years ago called The Amazing Tour Is Not on Fire, and it was just a little YouTube show. So it was just 2 actors, and it was this really, really cool space galaxy print pixelated Marley. So it was a little difficult because they had to make sure all the seams lined up perfectly.
Right. Yeah.
It was really cool.
Cool.
Yes. So perhaps people lay it down and take it up.
Roll it up. Roll it up. And it's heavy. It's heavy.
It is heavy. It is heavy.
I felt it come down and pick it up.
It's very satisfying to roll up. At least I think it is. That's one of my that was my favorite thing on Something Rotten, was to roll it and see how perfectly I could get it rolled up.
But prop boxes.
Yes.
So what are prop boxes?
Prop boxes are they're boxes. Generally, they're sort of like cabinets that open up and have for rent and for a lot of other shows we've done, we have a prop box stage right and a prop box stage left. They're kind of like gondolas that roll. And when you open them up, it has all the props for that side of the stage, hopefully. You have to do a little shuffling of props just to make everything fit. But it's a way for the actors to get their props as well. So it's a way to travel them, and then it's a way for actors to go and they know where everything is. Everything's labeled, all the props are labeled, so they can, So if it's part of the show where they don't have to have a handoff, where it's slower and they can just go to the prop box, get their prop, hang out a bit, and then go back out on stage. And it's just a way to stay organized.
Nice. Yeah. Most people, in schools, they probably call them prop tables, and they'll have a table.
Yes.
They're not traveling.
I did a tour with only tables. It was the small, The Amazing Tour Was Not on Fire, because we didn't have enough props to warrant a prop box. So we had a hamper full of props. I'd ask the local to set up a table for me, and then I'd put the props on the table. So it just depends on the show.
Very good. Well, there's something I'm going to dive into from a conversation you and I had before today, and because you had mentioned it, and it was something I had never heard of, but it's an interesting concept. And again, one of the goals that we want to do is just to help educate people about the life, right? Touring, or if somebody's on Broadway, what is that? And it has to do with what I think you called it a room buyout.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, just a little short thing, but I thought it was cool. I thought somebody else might. So tell us what that means. What is it? Because it's a part of touring life.
Absolutely. So on tour, most of the tours that I've been on, generally the company provides housing for you, and it's almost always a hotel. So and you don't get a choice, but they'll book a hotel for you, and it's normally very nice. But the most recent tour I was on, you had the option to take a housing buyout. So in that case, you could opt not to take the hotel room, and the company would give you the money, what they would pay for the hotel room, and you could find your own housing. I went through the company manager, and just to make sure that the housing that I was choosing was like, I'm not going to be like 40 miles away or anything like that. So it's nice because a lot of times on tour you don't get a kitchen. So it's nice to be able to have that option to buy out and get maybe a small apartment or a Airbnb that has a kitchen, and you can cook and you can have a space that isn't a hotel, because hotels can get a little soulless after a while. So it's nice. It's a nice option to have. It depends on the company and it depends on the tour and it depends on the contract, but it's nice when you have the option. They also have a airline buyout as well sometimes, because when you in my experience, when you sign up for a tour, you are traveling from one city. They assume that you're from, if I'm from Buffalo, that's my point of origin. They fly me to and from Buffalo. But in certain circumstances, you can take a buyout and you can have the money from the airline and you can fly somewhere else. And which was very nice on an international tour, because if you only had a week off between cities, you don't really want to go home. So having a buyout for that was nice.
Yeah, that's cool. That does give you options. I didn't know about the flight buyout too.
Yeah.
Especially on an international. Why would you want to fly home when you're in Europe or somewhere? You can fly and see cities you haven't seen.
Exactly. It was very nice.
That's cool. That's kind of a nice little perk.
Yes.
Nice little perk.
Yeah.
So, when you're on tour, it strikes me that one of the things that you are, and that a good props master must be, is kind of a jack of all trades, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't, the phrase is jack of all trades, master of none. But I would say, honestly, that probably doesn't apply. You got to be a jack of all trades and a master of most or many, right? In order to what you got to do, you're kind of the everybody's star, because you're supporting the whole cast and crew with different things. So with that in mind, are there some skills that you would recommend for a young aspiring prop master to learn and get into their toolkit as quick as they can?
Absolutely. Having a base knowledge of carpentry is really, really helpful. Knowing like how to use a screw gun is just, it's helpful because you don't have to rely on anybody to fix your stuff because people are on tour are often busy. And so being self-reliant is really helpful. A basic understanding of sewing is helpful because there's a lot of fabric props and you don't want to always bother the head wardrobe to help you. So especially if it doesn't have to look pretty, if it's just like, oh, this bag ripped in the middle, I have to like sew it up real quick.
Strength over aesthetics.
Yes, exactly. Having some knowledge of electrics is helpful. I've had to solder things to fix them in the past. I had a microphone on the last tour that I had to fix. So knowing soldering was helpful. It hasn't come up a lot, but it's good to know. I had a sign on The Amazing Tour Is Not on Fire that just constantly would fall apart. So I'd have to solder it like every show. So knowing that was good. Just gathering as many skills as you can is helpful. Even if you don't think it will be. I was really into bookbinding in college, just for fun, and I was really interested in that. And then on Something Rotten, I needed to make a new notebook for Nigel, and so it was just helpful to have those skills.
That's awesome. That's good. So basically, whatever you can learn it, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so we're kind of down to one of my favorite questions of all time here, and it's because, again, I love all of these things. I love theater. I'm a big fan. I'm a nerd, right? And I love meeting the people that do them and make the magic happen. The stars, the hidden stars, because you are good at what you do, or you wouldn't be doing it. And you love it, or you wouldn't be doing it, because it's obvious that to tour, especially in touring, that lifestyle is a demanding lifestyle, and you have to sacrifice to be a part of it. So there's something about it that keeps you doing it and keeps you loving it and passionate about it. And I would just love to hear you talk a little bit about that. What is it that really fuels you in this and gets you going?
I think for me, it's the excitement of something new every day. No theater that I load into is the same. And it often you have to be creative in your approach to loading things in. Sometimes the theater is very, very small, and you'll walk in the morning and be like, how is this show going to fit in here? It always happens and it always works. But getting there is exciting to me. So I have a lot of fun doing that. I really like organizing the backstage life, and making sure that the cast knows what's going on, because sometimes it'll be like, oh, this thing that, that's always stage right, it's not going to be stage right today. That kind of thing is very exciting to me. I like the world of props for the same reason, because it's always something new and it's always unexpected. I like having to fix things that I would have had no idea how I could fix them before. Like, on Mamma Mia, we had a bagpipe that broke and I had to fix a bagpipe. And I never in a million years thought I would have to fix a bagpipe. But
you mean you don't do that all the time?
So yeah, it's just the excitement, and I love the collaboration. And I also love meeting new people every day and working with new people every day, because that's also, you have to be creative in how you work with people, because everybody's communication style is different. So trying to figure out how the most effective way to communicate with someone is also really fun for me. So.
And was that something you just learned that you had to learn, or was there somebody that kind of helped mentor you in some of those things?
A lot of it was learned on the job, but the head props person that I worked with on my first 2 tours, his name was Joe DeFonso. He is really, really, he's an excellent people person. And so a lot of it I learned just from watching him. And he would, when he would do something, when he would speak to someone and I'd be like, well, why did he do it this way? He would always explain to me, oh, well, I thought this, and then that's why I spoke to them that way. And that's why my approach was different than what you thought it would be, kind of. So yeah, he helped me a lot. And a lot of it was trial and error as well. Especially when I became a props head for the very first time. It was an international tour. So a lot of people that I was working with, English wasn't their first language, and some of them didn't speak English at all. So that was also a huge learning experience, because it wasn't really so much what I was saying as how I was saying it, kind of. And just,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, being patient and everything.
Yeah, so it's good to be a learner and a teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Always.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet that you think would be good for our listeners to hear? Maybe anything you wish someone had told you when you were considering getting into this profession?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I wish that I knew when I started, even in theater in general, is that, like, not to be afraid to ask other people for help. That theater is such a collaborative art that people aren't going to think less of you if you don't know how to do something, hopefully. At least I try to not be that way, or I try to be that way. So just not being scared to ask for help. I was very scared at the beginning. I thought I was all on my own. I was like, I'm on props, just my little prop world. But just knowing that everybody, it's a team, and that you don't have to be scared of your shortcomings, because that's how you learn, is by asking. So.
Yeah, it's I don't know if I would say it's one of the things that has surprised me the most, but it's one of the things that has pleased me the most, maybe the happiest to realize, is that as I interview people and talk to people and hear their story, I have yet to experience anyone with what I would say is an ego. And people ask me that, hey, when you talk to these people, you have to deal with ego? No, everybody is super nice, and they all have that same attitude that you just shared, was always be looking to learn and always be looking to teach someone else. That's awesome. That is awesome. So, and on every level, there's, that's when you truly hone your skills, is when you're willing to do both of those things, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, it's time. And I know that this probably is the whole reason you wanted to be on this, so that you could be on the Gateway Mortgage Wall of Wisdom, right? So it's our wall of wisdom that every guest shares a snippet of information or advice that I kind of like to think, Amy, if you could go back in time or make a phone call to young Amy when she was just first starting out in all of this, and could give her just one tidbit of advice, what would that be? And I'm going to write it on some gap tape, and we're going to board. So it's your turn to drop some knowledge on us, some wisdom. What do you think that would be?
I would say that nothing that you learn isn't important.
Ooh, that's good.
So that all of these, as when I was young, all of these weird little interests I had, and all of these things that I chose to do, like bookbinding and drawing anime for hours and hours and hours, it's all helpful. It adds to your toolbox as a person. So don't be afraid to do whatever weird thing you want to do.
That's exactly right, because you never ever know. There have been things that people have asked me, and this is just it fits into this, but doesn't fit into this, but it brings the point across. For whatever reason, I always grew up carrying a pocket knife, right? And I had people who would always ask me, I don't understand why you pocket knife. Why do you carry a pocket knife? Blah, blah, blah. But you know what? Those are also the people who almost constantly ask me to borrow my pocket knife. Right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong. If it's something that you want to learn, something you want to do, it's going to benefit you someday.
Yes.
Right? And even if it's not that specifically like anime, maybe you're not drawing anime for anything for a tour, but the skills you learned and honed while you drew anime are incredibly valuable, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, I have it. I got it right here. I was able to get it all on there. Nice. A whole bunch of paint came out on the end, so it looks like we really want to. But there you go. And so now we're running out of room. We're gonna have to get a bigger board or something. But we got a room right down here. Hopefully, nobody wants to call Michael McElroy because we just covered his phone number up. But that's okay. All right, right there. Nothing that you learn isn't important. That's awesome. Including all of the things on our wall of wisdom. They're all important. All important. Well, the last thing I want to do here before saying goodbye is we believe that as a star, you are truly a star just as much as any actor, any musician. It doesn't matter. The magic doesn't happen. Really doesn't happen without you. It sounds like the whole thing would fall apart. Right? Nobody would know what to do without Amy. That's awesome. And so, but you don't get to go out and take a curtain call. And so I am going to represent the world, and I want to give you a curtain call. I want to give you a round of applause for all that you do, because you deserve it just as much as anyone. And so this is for you, for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to bow, curtsy, or just listen, I don't care. But, and you know what? If you're listening, hey, clap for Amy when this is over, because you truly do deserve it. Because we don't just say that. We believe that you are a star, and thank you for being a star, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Well, you know what? We think that you are awesome, and it's been our privilege to have you here today. So thank you for joining the family. You're a part of us now. You'll always be. You're welcome back to hang out in the trailer anytime you want. That's just always right here. But you know what? Everybody else, thank you for joining us as well. Of course, we love having you here. I think I would still do this even if people would just talk to me if nobody listened, but it's much more fun to know that people all over the world are interested in this. And because, you need to share this with people. If you have friends in theater and they're not watching the program, why are you keeping this to yourself? This is treasure. So share, subscribe. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, like, comment. All of those things helps us as we do this and help kind of fund the program. So do those things and spread the word. Go out and be an evangelist for the hidden stars of theater. I'll love you for it. Amy will love you for it. Right, Amy?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I knew it. But thank you guys for joining us today. Hey, thank you, Poway High School in San Diego, California. You guys are my heroes as well. You're our stars for the day too. And yeah, Everybody else, we'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.